So we have an update on what is happening with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition and what I discussed just yesterday, as of the time that I'm recording this video, about Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition and what we could see with the Nintendo Switch 2 and how this is huge. A 60 frames per second mode, updated resolution or DLSS, performance boosts, all sorts of stuff. I felt that it was a very high possibility because of the timing of the Nintendo Switch 2 release in terms of things, and Xenoblade Chronicles X in terms of the backwards compatibility and the technology that Nintendo's using, going from Tegra now to a custom chip Tegra from what they've done. And it looks like that is going to be the case. So we're absolutely going to discuss the proof that's happening with that, and it's into a number of other topics. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here, starting off with Mr. Massa Grader over on Twitter. This person apparently is on the Nintendo Switch scene, translating and modding games, plus writing homebrew. He's someone out there that definitely has experience looking through the code and looking at what's happening with different games with modding. And this is what he had to say about Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. The game apparently has a dynamic resolution ranges from 504p to 720p in handheld mode and 760p to 1080p in docked mode. So essentially, depending on what's happening on screen, it can go as high as 720p in terms of the resolution, the pixels drawn on screen on what you see in the clarity. Now, the next thing here is the big interesting thing. So the game's executable has hidden 60 frames per second mode. It seems to be implemented only partially, since enabling it causes weird issues, as proof screen from function that sets UI speed 1.0.1. Now, there was a little bit of a follow-up on this when someone asked him about, hey, well, what's going on with this? Does this mean that there's a Nintendo Switch 2 version or something like that? Like, if it runs on the Switch 2, does it make it run better? Like, what's going on with it? And he stated that it can be the groundwork towards it. No other Xenoblade game has something like this from what I found. That is probably the most interesting thing, is the fact that he says, well, look, no other Xenoblade game has that at this point. This one is launching so close to the Nintendo Switch 2 in terms of the reveal and everything. It could be part of a suite of initial games that Nintendo says, hey, in addition to getting your next big Mario, your next big Mario Kart, whatever the case is, there's going to be a handful of games that instantly maybe work right out of the box when it comes down to an update or something like that, and it just runs better on the Nintendo Switch. So I think that would be a very, very appealing thing for many people that are looking to upgrade to the Nintendo Switch 2. So if you have a Switch 1 and you're looking to be sold on that, but also people who somehow don't have a Nintendo Switch and say, well, okay, I can play some of the best games now in better quality. So I think that would be really, really cool. There is one more thing that I want to discuss that he said, because someone did ask, well, is it tied to animations or something like that? And he says that gameplay is rendered every second frame. So even though it outputs 60 frames per second, you get, in fact, 30 usable frames. Cutscenes sometimes are working fine. Sometimes some objects are jittering, like hard-coded to be 30 frames per second. Sometimes it's, again, every second frame rendered. So essentially, he's talking about what the issues are that happens if you do execute that 60 frames per second mode. So I think that the fact that there's some stuff that's working and it seems like it's in there, it's just waiting to be unlocked. It's hidden. So maybe once you download that update, all of a sudden it unlocks it within the code and you can play it at 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch, or there's a specific function in the Nintendo Switch 2 that allows that code to be unlocked when you play it on the Switch 2. So this is incredibly exciting, and it's something that I once again talked about. I'm like, hey, look, this is probably going to be happening, and it would be huge for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. But what else would be exciting and huge is if, for those who are not subscribed to the channel, to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the best Nintendo Switch 2 RPG community on YouTube. So please hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying the content, hit that like button, and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. Now let's go ahead and jump into another thing here that shows that the Nintendo Switch 2 ramp up is coming, because Nintendo actually had an ownership part with this team. My favorite childhood team growing up, the Seattle Mariners, and it looks like they're entering a partnership here once again to promote Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch 2, because the Seattle Mariners official account on Twitter said this: our jerseys are leveling up. We are excited to expand our long-standing relationship with Nintendo of America with jerseys featuring Nintendo at home and Nintendo Switch 2 on the road. So I really love the fact that they're on the road. You have the Switch 2 patch at home. People know about Nintendo. They're going to be advertising the Switch 2 probably in the stadium or whatever the case is. So you just have that Nintendo patch. I absolutely love this type of promotion. Baseball is something that I don't watch as much anymore. I used to be a huge baseball fan in the early and mid 90s and even up to the early 2000s. The Seattle Mariners have broken my heart way too many times for me to count, with all of the great talent they've had on those teams over the decade from the 90s to the early 2000s, and not winning a single World Series title just basically broke me as a fan. It broke me as a fan, so I don't really watch, especially the 2001 season. Oh my gosh, that season where they won like that record of games and Ichiro and everything. Anyway, I can go on and on forever about that, but I do love the promotion here overall. It's so cool that they're going to be doing this, and yes, Nintendo Switch 2 is coming, man. We have the April Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. People are getting excited and hyped about that, and I just think that Nintendo is going to make sure when it comes to the marketing, when it comes to the system, people are going to know that there is the sequel to one of the best and potentially even the best selling system of all time with the Nintendo Switch 1. So I love the promotion and marketing for this, and big love to the Seattle Mariners. Despite them breaking my heart many times, they have won it back with this long-standing partnership with Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch 2 marketing. I'll definitely have to check out some of those games on the road so I can see that big, huge, it's a big patch, Nintendo Switch 2 patch, which they have to make it that big too in order to see the small text on there, Nintendo Switch. So, and yeah, people are going to be batting, so you're going to be able to, see that patch on there. So very good overall. Now let's go and get into the next topic here. Shout outs to Faz over on Twitter. He is a big Atlas Persona guy, and he actually talked about this, saying that P4RE.jp was registered a few hours ago, was registered recently. 2 years ago, P3RE.jp was registered. 3 months later, Persona 3 Reload was revealed. They did this last time, and we got P3 Reload. We got a full-on Unreal Engine 4 remake of Persona 3. So could the same thing be happening here with Persona 4? Now, people have talked about this when it comes to the Atlas fans. Myself, I've played Persona 4. It is maybe the best Persona game. Some people feel that it is the best Persona game. I think that it's a fantastic game. That's perfectly fine the way that it is. But if there's one thing that I realize with a lot of these companies is that they don't care if something is perfectly fine the way that it is. Because Persona 4 Golden and the remaster of it, or the HD port of it, is perfectly fine as it is. But there's money to be made if you could remake that game and sell it. People will buy it. Persona 3 Reload, which is like what, the 4th release of the game, sold over 1 million units very quickly. So if they remake Persona 4, it can probably do better than that, because many people feel that Persona 4 is better than Persona 3. Now, we have to wait and see in terms of how people feel about the remake. We got to see the quality of it. We got to see what they're doing, if there's content cut, what content's added, the quality of life features, whatever the case is, right? But at the same time, Persona 4 has a lot of clout. People really love Persona 4. So if they want to remake that and put it on newer systems, chances are they're going to do it because it's going to make them a lot of money. And if they can get it done from the experience that they learned with Persona 3 Remake, I'm guessing that the process for making this one will go even smoother than that one, because they've learned a number of things, obviously more comfortable Unreal Engine 4 if they're using that, whatever it is. So I do feel that this is more than 50% chance likely. It's more than 50-50, just because, once again, we got the same thing before. Why would they do that if it wasn't going to happen? Maybe they just want to register it just in case they want to do it in the future, or just in case something's going to happen. So it's not a foregone conclusion, but I do think that, yeah, Persona 4 Remake seems like it's going to happen. And it seems like it's going to happen because they can make a lot of money with it. But here's the thing with Persona 4. I do think that Persona 4 Remake, even if they do that, it doesn't have an effect on what's happening with Persona 6. Persona 6 has been in development for a long time. From the leaks and from what we understand, it's been in development, and that's still going to come out. I think that if Persona 4 does come out beforehand or after, or whatever the case is, it is what it is. Like, Atlas is always going to bring out Persona re-releases and remakes and re-whatevers in order to make more money, and that's completely fine. I have no problem with that. They're really high-quality games. But I don't think that it's going to affect Persona 6 in any type of negative way. I think that Persona 6 is still going to be set, locked in, ready to go whenever they decide to announce it. Persona 6 has become like this monolith when it comes down to like people just waiting and anticipating it. It's been so long. It's in the realm of Mario Kart 8 and Grand Theft Auto 5 when it comes down to how long this game has lasted and some of the various versions and new content released and continuously prolonging the life of this game. They've had spin-offs and all sorts of things. So I do feel that Persona 6 really is one of those things that people are going to be excited to see when they finally decide to show it off. But we got to wait and see exactly what's happening with it here. But what do you guys think about Persona 4 Remake potentially happening here? And of course, Persona 6? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, moving on to the next topic here, guys. We're going to go over the Famitsu sales for the past week. It was very interesting to see that Monster Hunter Wilds, the boost that game had for the PlayStation 5, has ran out just a bit because the Famitsu sales reveal that the Nintendo Switch somehow sold a bit more despite not having that big Monster Hunter game. But I think it kind of goes to show you the climate in Japan in terms of the anticipation for the Nintendo Switch 2 and what's happening. And that's the reason why I wanted to discuss it. I did have a number of people asking me if the Switch 1 sales in Japan were going to tank all the way down to probably like less than 5 digits, and that's just not the case because the people that are buying the Nintendo Switch now at this point, it's for probably kids, or it's for people that aren't hardcore into gaming, or maybe they're just starting out and they're not going to be the first or early adopters of the Nintendo Switch 2, so that's why you still see that the Nintendo Switch 1, despite not getting some of the big, huge AAA games like Monster Hunter Wilds late in the life here, it can still sell the best in Japan. It can still sell decently because Japan is just really into the back catalog of what the Nintendo Switch 1 has, and it's into the hybrid nature of the system. And I would also say this, I do think that there are people that are anticipating whenever the Nintendo Switch 2 does come out, I'll just upgrade. I'll trade mine in, I'll sell it, I'll do whatever the case is in order to get that new system. And the best thing about that is that the Nintendo Switch 2 is backwards compatible. So the fact that it's backwards compatible is absolutely going to be awesome for all of these people that are buying the Nintendo Switch 1, even though the Nintendo Switch 2 has already been announced, and they eventually upgrade down the line. Now, if you go down to software sales, Monster Hunter Wilds, phenomenal game, still in the #1 spot, over 40,000 plus units. Remember, this is only physical. It doesn't include the digital sales, physical retail sales overall. Another thing that I wanted to point out here, it's cool to see that Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remaster still in the top 3, 7,330 units. Nothing super crazy, but at the same time, I think that for an old school game coming back at $50, this is a positive momentum for Suikoden for them to continue the franchise. There's a mobile game coming out as well, so Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remaster does well along with the mobile game. We could see a brand new Suikoden game on consoles. Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, once again, it's Donkey Kong. It's still there in at #4. Then a lot of the usual suspects overall with Mario Kart, Pokemon, Animal Crossing, and Super Smash Bros. Like I stated with the Nintendo Switch console sales, hardware Switch was the top selling system despite not having that Monster Hunter Wilds huge boost that PS5 got for a bit. 27,898 units, while the PS5 sold 27,863 units, so a pretty small difference between them. But once again, Monster Hunter Wilds provided a big boost, but pretty much has already fizzled out at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see what Capcom does with Monster Hunter on the Nintendo Switch 2. Do they make a brand new Monster Hunter game built for the Nintendo Switch 2? If they are, they're probably already working on that. Or do they port Monster Hunter Wilds, which they did kind of hint that they could be doing that. So we'll see exactly how that's going to work. They're having huge success though with Monster Hunter Wilds. It's doing incredibly well, 8 million plus units sold. It's going to be a huge seller, especially once those discounts kick in like Monster Hunter games always do get discounted. So very good there. But what are your thoughts overall when it comes to everything that we talked about here with Xenoblade Chronicles X and Nintendo's advertising with the Seattle Mariners, in addition to Persona 4 Remake potentially happening, and of course the sales? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch RPG videos and more right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.